Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to make an air dry clay koi fish. So this guy is made out of Crayola white air dry clay, not Model Magic, like actual clay. It's very fragile though when it dries, so you have to be very careful with it so you don't break it into a million pieces. And this particular one I formed from one giant piece, so I didn't have to slip and score, which is a technique you usually use with clay, where, for instance, if I had a fin that was separate and I wanted to stick it onto the body, I would have to like scrape the spot where I wanted the fin, and then I would paint water and clay, which is called slip, on it, and then I would almost kind of glue the fin to the body with that. But since in our classes are only 40 minutes, in the interest of time, so we won't have to do all the slipping and scoring, we are just going to create our fish out of one piece. So for instance, these fins, I just kind of like pinched into a shape. I didn't like use like extra pieces of clay and stick it on. This I pinched into the tail as well. So the idea of this project is to use something to make some texture, like some scales in the fish. And koi fish come in all different, like a lot of different really bright and beautiful colors, mostly orange, red, and white, and yellow or gold. So this guy, I used yellow, orange, and black. They just kind of have random markings on them. But you can make yours any colors you want. And I'm just going to put him aside, and I'm going to show you how I did it from start to finish. So here is my chunk of wet air dry clay, and this is what I'm going to create my fish from. So actually maybe I'll put this guy here and I'm going to try to recreate him with this wet clay. So it's squishy. It's a little dirtier than Model Magic. You get it on your hands. You probably have to wash your hands afterwards, or at least wipe them with a wet paper towel. But I cut like a giant block into these long shapes, so it's already kind of shaped like the fish. So I'm just going to try to smooth out any of these little cracks that I have here. Like I have this whole crack down the bottom. Maybe I'll make that the bottom so I don't have to worry about smoothing that all out, because I do need to work quickly so that I can finish this in a 40-minute class period, because once it starts to dry, you can't continue to work on it or it will just crumble. So with that seam there, I'm going to make that be the bottom. So I'm going to put my guy down here, and I'm going to push him so that his bottom part is kind of flat. So I just gave him a little push on the table just to flatten that. And then I know that I want this fin on the top. So I am going to first figure out which one I want the head to be. I'm going to make this be the head end. So I'm going to make that a little bit round, the shape of a fish's head, or at least this kind of fish. Also, I am making this koi be from the top, because then afterwards I'm going to make a pond that he's swimming in. So I know that I'm going to need two fins, like a fin on either side here. So maybe I will start with those actually. I'm going to just jab my finger into its side like this. And then I'll just smooth this part out. And now I have a fin over here already. And I didn't take it and make it from a smaller piece and stick it on. If I did that, I would have to slip and score. But since it's already part of this chunky piece of the fish, like this one big chunk, then I don't have to do that. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm just going to use my finger and just kind of scrape out a fin on that side too, and then flatten it down. And then I can pick this up and smooth this out too, so it's not so thin. I can like squish this in to make it thicker in that spot. So now I have the side fins, and I know I need to have a fin like this. So this part's going to need to be in half. So I do have some little plastic clay tools that I can use. This one is kind of like a little safe knife. I'm just gonna stick that right there to split that end into 2 pieces. And then now I have the tail. So then I can flatten these out and shape them how I want. But again, I don't have to slip and score because they are part of this big chunk. I didn't take little pieces and have to add them on. So they're already on there good. I feel like he's a little skinny right behind the fin since I took that clay away. So I'm gonna try to squish them back together a little bit to fatten them up in that spot. Try to smooth that out too, because anything that I leave that's like a thin jutting out piece is probably gonna crumble off, because sadly air dry clay is not very strong. So if you were to use like real clay and you were gonna fire this in a kiln, it would be strong, but not so much the air dry clay. All right, so I'm gonna bend it the way I want it. So I'll just bend it the same way as this one. Maybe I'll bend his head like this way, so he's a little different. But I want it to look like he's swimming, like in action. So I'll just bend him however I want. You can bend yours however you want. And so I have these 2 fins. I have the tail fins. Now I need to do the top fin, which is this part. So to do that, I'm just gonna like pinch with my fingers from where it starts, like right behind where the head starts. I'm gonna pinch up to make that fin happen. And then I'm gonna just make it kind of disappear into the tail and smooth out any lines. So I'll pick this up so you can see the edge. So I kind of just pinched it into a top fin there. And then I'm just gonna make sure that this is all stuck together good. It's not gonna crumble. Then I can take one of my tools and I can make little ridges on the fins to make them look like they have a texture. So I could go like this, make this fin look like it has these lines on it, all the way down. And then on the other side, I'm just lifting this so that you can see it on the video, but you could do all of this just with your fish on the table, so you don't have to worry about squishing it or wrecking it or anything. So it's okay if it gets a little like uneven on the top of the fin, or if you accidentally like cut into a piece. It's all right, just to show the texture of that fin there. So now you can see he has, although I feel like there's more lines on this side and not as many on this side. So I'm gonna go back in the interest of making him symmetrical, try to add some more line texture on this side. So texture is how something feels. So his fin feels a little rough and bumpy with those lines. All right, so then I have like some little crumbs here. I can try to push them back on, or I can know that if they stay crumbly like that, they might probably just crumble off when the fish dries, but that's okay. You can just brush off any crumbs. And then I could use this again for the tail to make lines on the tail. So I'm not pushing down like super hard because I don't want to cut this into a bunch of pieces. I just want to make an impression into the clay with this knife thing. And on the other part of the tail. All right, that seems like a good texture. Let me just bring it closer so you can see I scratched in to make those lines. I'm gonna do that on the little front fins too. This one. Okay. Now I want to make, so So you can see his fins are all done. He doesn't have a face yet, and he doesn't have scales yet. So those are the two things I still need to make. So I actually found that it works well if you use a skinny marker like this, and you can just press for an eye in the side of his face like that. And then you could do another one on the other side. And that really makes like a perfect fish eye. So there's his eyes. If you want, you can make nostrils. For the nostrils on this guy, I just used a pencil. So I just stuck that pencil right in and made nostrils. So now he has eyes and nostrils. And then I also, for the scales, I could use this again, and I could just push it in, like using kind of it tilted, and just push to make these scales with the top of this marker. So I'm never opening the marker. I don't want to color on the clay because it would ruin the marker. I am not using it for the color, so it doesn't matter what color you get when you're picking it either. Just using it for the cap, actually, to press and make those scales. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So he has a nice scaly texture. Okay. All right. So I'm actually done with making my clay fish. I'm now going to lay him on a flat piece of paper so that he dries, and he'll dry in a couple days. So that's what you can do. And then next I'm going to make a pond for him to live on. So I will show you how to do that too. Okay, so now I'm going to make my fish pond for him to live on. So here is my fish. He's all painted, and I want the pond to be big enough that he can like be centered in it and swimming around his pond. So I have this piece, it's 9 by 6 inches, I think, but depending on how big you make your fish is how big you want to make your pond. I also have this little packet of salt, because salt, when you add it to wet watercolor, makes a really cool chemical reaction and pattern that looks cool for water. So I'm just going to put that aside for a second, and I'm going to do what's called the wet on wet technique. So I have water here and a brush, and I am going to paint the water just by itself all over my paper so that it's nice and covered with water. It's okay if I miss some spots, because it's hard to see where the water covers. And you might have to hold it down a little bit, because when it gets wet, it's going to curl up. So my whole paper is wet. So now I'm going to choose what color I want to start with. I might use a bunch of different blues, maybe some greens, to make the color of water. So I'm going to just wet my brush and then swirl it in the first blue that I want to use. So I'm wetting the watercolor, and I'm going to put it, on the wet paper. So since it's wet, if I just touch my brush to the paper, it's going to spread and make like a nice, interesting pattern that looks watery. I could rinse my brush and then pick a different blue, wet that, swirl my brush in there, put some more on there in other spots. These two blues actually look extremely similar, but they're in the same pack, which is weird, but maybe they're not the same, but they look really similar. So I'm gonna actually rinse my brush and get a different color. I think there's like an indigo in here, which is a mix of purple and blue, which is an amazing color that often gets overlooked. It is in the rainbow, but usually people just say blue to violet, but indigo exists. So here it is. It's kind of purpley / blue. So I'm just gonna add some of those spots on there. Then I'm gonna rinse, and maybe I'll put some like teal green in there too. If I were to mix too many colors together, I might accidentally make brown or gray, which is not really what I want my water to look like. And I'm kind of just going over the spots that are white. And I want to do this pretty quickly because I don't want all of this to dry, because I still need to put on the salt, and the salt needs the paint and the water to be super like puddly still. So sometimes when you do this, you do accidentally, like, it starts to dry. So then you can just kind of re-wet it and then add the salt. So I'm just gonna add some water just to spread what I have here. So I have some lighter spots. I'm trying not to mix all the colors up. I'm trying to just kind of poke into the spots that don't have any paint on them, because I want there to be some differentiation in the water. There's a lot here. Maybe I'll pull some of that and put it down here. It's a big puddle right there too. Clear up some puddles and spread them. Otherwise, if you don't have puddles, you could get some more paint on your brush like that. Add some more around the edges. Okay. Here we go. You also could do what's called a controlled splatter, and sometimes I don't even mention this in a classroom because some people just can't handle a controlled splatter and it becomes uncontrolled. But I'm going to show you because I believe that you can do a controlled splatter and control yourself. So I'm going to rinse my brush. I am going to get some of this darker blue on my brush. And then I'm gonna hold my brush over my paper, but very close to it. And I'm gonna use one finger and I'm gonna tap it so that it makes this little splattered pattern, but it's not splattering me, it's not splattering the person next to me. It's barely splattering the table. Might get a different color too, some of this teal. So if you think you can handle it without splattering your neighbor or yourself or the entire room, you can do a controlled splatter. Remember, you're just tapping your brush with one finger, and that is making a cool texture on your paper. I don't really like how light it is on the edges, so I'm gonna get some of this indigo and I'm gonna just put some of that on there in some spots. Still like keeps disappearing down here. I don't know why. All right, and then I might just do a little controlled splatter of the plain water. Then, now that it's all covered with water, I'm ready for my little salt packet. Just gonna tear it, and I'm only gonna use like half of this salt packet, so it's not a lot of salt. Some people think that like the more salt, like the better it's gonna look, but that's not true. You just wanna use it sparingly. As long as you have like a little bit on there. Like I don't even think I used half of this packet right now. So I have the salt on there, and then you can just don't touch it after that. Don't try to paint on top of the salt. Just leave it alone and watch it start to dry, and the salt will suck up the paint because it's wet and watery, and salt absorbs water. So as the salt dries, it will suck up the water in the paint, and it will make a really cool pattern that kind of looks like snowflakes or bubbles or stars. So I'm just gonna fold the top of this over so that the next person can use the other half of this. And I'm just gonna let this dry, and then I'll be ready, once it's dry, to glue my fish into his pond.